Hey, Glenn here, Monster Guitars. That SG-inspired guitar that I'm building needs a neck, and I did a couple of different things when building this neck, involving carbon fiber rods and a headstock veneer. There was also a fatal accident in this very workshop during this video, but I've decided to share it with you anyway, so watch on if you are brave enough. I'm going to route the channel for the truss rod, which I've done numerous times before, but this is going to be slightly different because I've decided to add carbon fiber rods to this neck just for extra rigidity. The thing is though, I've seen the rods that other people use and you look at them on the end and they're square, whereas, well, as you can see, this one's not. It's 10 millimeters wide and 2 millimeters thick, so it's kind of a ribbon. I have thought of a way to do this though, so we'll see if it works. Rather than try to explain it now, I'll just do it and then I'll show you how it works or doesn't. Let's go. I know, I'm just telling you the words and then doing this where you can't see it. I've got this very handy jig set up for routing my truss rod channels, and I'll show it to you. I don't have a very handy vacuum set up to do this though. So it's just made from plywood and then some scraps of pine, and I have the guitar neck held fast in my vise, and I draw on the neck where I want the channel to go. Of course you can't really see the drawing now because I've routed through it, and then I place this jig with the slot in it over the neck as so. And it is built in such a way that my router fits exactly between those pieces of wood and slides. I soap these pieces every now and then so that it glides more easily. The bit is positioned directly over the slot, so I can position the bit over the line that I want to route, and then I clamp it down thus and route to my heart's content. I'd still have to worry about getting the length right though, so I've got a stop piece of wood clamped there, but I don't have to worry about it going off track that way, which would be a disaster. I must report a rather dreadful workshop injury, but not on me this time. I've noticed just now what appears to be some dismembered bits of cockroach body hanging out the bottom of where the motor is in there, and some legs. I believe what has happened, I surmise, based on my skills of detection, that a cockroach has, while I was not using this, crawled up through those, I guess, ventilation holes, and has now been made mincemeat of by an electric motor. Oh dear. Moment of silence. R.I.P. So the channel is fully routed now, and of course without the rods in it just looks far too wide. That truss rod's going to rattle around in there, but I'm not dumb. I've routed it that wide because on either side of the truss rod is, oh, it's going to be very snug. Do I have to make it a little bit wider? I do want it snug though. If I had two hands, see, it's because of you. about making it all nice and level. I will go back and make sure that the slot is the right depth. It may be slightly, ever so slightly too shallow, but you can see the point there. That's going to be really nice and tight. So amongst the mess, while I've got my scarf joint for the back angled headstock gluing up, I'm going to give some thought to the headstock veneer. I haven't really done a headstock veneer before, but I'm going to, because I think they look quite good, and well, because I haven't really done it before, and so it's a new experience. So I've got here a piece of rimu that I have sliced off of that piece, which some might regard as a scrap, but I do not. So number one, it's a bit messy at the moment, straight off the bandsaw, and number two, it's also way too thick. This is, oh gosh, how thick is it? Let's find out, shall we? Approximately, with my ruler, which is not the best way for measuring the thickness of small things, but that's about 7 millimeters, which is way too thick. I want that to be about 2, maybe 3, but 2 or 3 millimeters, so quite thin by comparison. My drum sander doesn't like very thin things. I don't know what the minimum thickness recommended on that is. It might be, I don't know, 5 mils, but of course there is a way of getting things sanded down even thinner than that, so let's do that now. It's too small, as I said, it's too thin to go through the drum sander. There is a minimum thickness here, so I'm just going to sit it on this piece of plywood as it goes through to boost the thickness up, and that works fine. You could use double-sided tape to hold it onto the plywood, but I'm just going to use my fingers to hold it on as it goes in and as it comes out, and I find that works just fine. After doing this for a while, your piece of wood will start to get quite warm. I'm just going to let it cool down a bit and then continue, because heat does encourage warping. I just realized that I actually want to put binding on this headstock, and that affects the order in which I need to do things, because I'm going to have to route a binding channel around the headstock before I put the fretboard on, because that channel will actually go up under the edge of the fretboard, so that the binding on the headstock will have continuity with the, or at least visual continuity with the binding on the fretboard. So I need to do more work on the headstock before I put the fretboard on, which includes widening it slightly. All right. There we are. now that the veneer is gluing on, I'll take those clamps off tomorrow when everything's nice and dry, and I will have to start thinking about the shape of that headstock. I do have some shapes in mind, you know, I have built some guitars before, but I don't know exactly what I'll do on this one yet. Something I'm going to do on this fretboard that I haven't done, at least not in any of my videos before, is what's called purfling, which is where so you've got the binding, which is the outside layer of binding, and then inside that you've got a slightly shallower layer of a different color. So it looks like you've got multiple layers of binding. And so what I've done, I didn't do this on video in case something went wrong, but I've got my, if you're in the British broad world, that's a rebating bit, otherwise it's a rabbit cutter. And I took this fretboard and cut a purfling channel in there. So I'm going to put some purfling into that channel, and then on the outside I will put my larger strip of binding. So if you're going to bind the headstock, what you have to do is you have to basically fully shape the headstock and the part of the neck just down there where the headstock binding will connect to, so that you can then route the channel all the way around the headstock, and that will run up into just under the end of the fretboard there. Okay, so routing the channel is pretty darn easy. So you can see that before I cut the binding channel, I had to have the very end of the neck where the fretboard will go shaped fully. And now I have put binding into that channel and made it all nice and tidy. I'll check to see if there's any more tidying up that needs to be done. But you can see there that the binding goes all the way around the headstock and then ends just under where the end of the fretboard will sit. And because the fretboard has the same coloured binding, although it's a bit grubby at the moment on the outside, that will provide visual continuity. It's like there'll be binding all the way from the top of the neck all the way around the headstock and up the other side. And that will look nice, I think. So that's it. That's really what this video was about. The carbon fibre rods and putting a veneer on the headstock and binding it. Before I say goodbye, a reminder and a request. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please like the video. Feel free to share my stuff. I would really like to raise my profile, get a few more customers, and start to spend a bit more of my life building guitars rather than working in an office. So when the camera shuts off, I'm going to continue working on this neck. I'll put the fretboard on, start shaping it, do things that you've seen before, and I'll bring you guys and girls back into the picture when I start working on this body again, of the body of this very SG inspired guitar, and I start making it a little bit more complete, which really is what we would all like to be.